Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about William Shakespeare's King Lear. So this is one of my absolute favorite Shakespeare plays. I actually think the first time I encountered Lear may have been when I saw a production of it as an undergrad. And it's just such a good play. I've read it multiple times because it is really, really amazing. One of the things that I find really striking about it is that within the first act, Shakespeare basically, or within the first scene, rather, Shakespeare basically introduces all of the major themes of the play. So, I'll try and give you a short version of the plot. Basically, in the high plot, King Lear, elderly king, decides to divide his kingdom between his three daughters, Goneril the eldest, Regan the middle, and Cordelia the youngest, who is his favorite. He gives them a test of their love. Basically, he says, "Tell me how much you love me, and I will give you a third of the kingdom." Goneril and Regan do this. Cordelia basically is like, I have to be honest. I love you as much as I am supposed to love you. But I can't lie and flatter you the way that my sisters have. Lear goes nuts, and he disinherits her. The King of France is basically like, hey, honesty, that's super awesome. I will marry you, Cordelia. And Lear's like, you will marry her with nothing. She gets no inheritance of any kind, no portion of the kingdom. So Cordelia goes. Lear stays with Goneril, and he's going to alternate every month between living with Goneril and living with Regan. They immediately start plotting. So Goneril demands that he give up half of his retinue that they had agreed to. He was going to retain 100 knights. He demands he gives up 50 of them. He goes to Regan. Regan's like, I cannot help you in this matter in any way. Maybe you shouldn't have any knights whatsoever and just let our servants take care of you. So basically they both betray him. Lear then starts to lose his mind. He goes out into this storm and curses the elements, calling them down upon him, basically saying there is nothing that nature can do that will be worse to me than what my daughters have done to me. He's accompanied by the fool, who is a wise fool, as is so often the case in Shakespeare, and by Kent, a nobleman that he had banished for sticking up for Cordelia, who has returned in disguise as Cassius in order to continue serving Lear. So they are found out in the storm by Gloucester. Gloucester is a nobleman. This is one of the low plots, sort of the main low plot. Gloucester has disinherited his legitimate son Edgar because his bastard son, whom he also loves, named Edmund, has basically said, Edgar, my brother, your son, is plotting against you. He wants all of your stuff. You should be careful of him. Gloucester takes this at face value, and he disinherits Edgar. Edgar goes out on the run, disguises himself as poor Tom, a mad beggar, who also is out in the storm with Lear and Kent and the fool. They go to a barn. Gloucester finds them. Gloucester is like, hey, I've gotten word that Cordelia has landed from France with an army. She's at Dover. She's going to try and, you need to go to Dover, get to her. She will take care of you, as opposed to your two treacherous daughters, Goneril and Regan, who are plotting against you. For helping them out, Gloucester has his eyes very brutally put out by Regan's husband, Cornwall. So now there's a civil war, sort of, civil war, maybe. Civil war within the monarchical family, right? Because Cordelia has landed in Dover with a French army. Her husband, the King of France, has to go back to France, so she's leading the army. And then you've got Goneril and Regan with their husbands, Cornwall and Albany and Cornwall, respectively. Goneril's husband is Albany, Cornwall is Regan's husband. So they are mustering the English forces, and then you've got French forces and a bunch of English forces that have accumulated around Lear's standard. And there's a battle, and the forces of Goneril and Regan win. Edmund, the evil son of Gloucester, is on their side, but then their party sort of fractures because Albany finds out that Goneril, his wife, wants to basically kill him and marry Edmund. Regan, whose husband Cornwall has already died in a previous incident, she wants to marry Edmund. So both of the women are going after Edmund, which means that they are inherently going at each other, right? So Goneril poisons Regan. Goneril then goes and stabs herself once it's clear that stuff's not going to work out for her. Edmund is challenged basically by Edgar. And Edgar is basically like, you've done all these crimes. Edmund is like, prove it in combat. And they do, and Edmund dies. But not before he reveals that, having captured Lear and Cordelia, he has sent an assassin to go and kill them. And so at the end, Cordelia has been hanged in prison. Lear brings her body on, and we have this really tragic ending. It's one of the harshest endings of any Shakespeare play, because, I mean, while a play like, say, Hamlet ends with basically everyone dead, right? You do feel like there is hope, because you have Fortinbras, who has come on, and so you have a new king who's going to take over, and he's a legitimate king because it was his father's territory that old Hamlet had taken in battle, etc., etc. Here you get this horrific thing. Lear very famously comes in with Cordelia in his arms. And this is an interesting one, because this is an actual proper Shakespearean stage direction. Because one of the things with contemporary printings of Shakespeare plays, stage directions that are not in brackets are original, and stage directions that are in brackets are editorial commentary. So in this case, we've got, I'm probably going to be able to see it. Enter Lear with Cordelia in his arms, and the gentleman following. And the phrase, and the gentleman following, is in brackets. And Lear says, as he comes in, howl, 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 howl. Oh, you are men of stones. Had I your tongues and eyes, I would use them so that heaven's vault should crack. He's gone forever. I know when one is dead and when one lives. She's dead as earth. Lend me a looking glass. If that her breath will mist or stain the stone, why then she lives. And there's just this horrible moment for this final, from lines 255 of scene 5-3 to 329-ish, the end portion, right? There's less than 100 lines. It's one of the most emotionally brutal less than 100-line passages, I think, in all of drama. Lear comes in just absolutely devastated that his beloved daughter, whom he had misjudged and betrayed and disowned, but who still came to his aid at the moment of his greatest suffering, she is now dead before her time. And so Kent reveals himself as Kent, but nothing, and we learn that various other people have died, various other sort of minor characters, especially Edmund, who has been killed in the duel with Edgar. And Lear says, no life. Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life, and now no breath at all? Thou wilt come no more, never, 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 never. Pray you undo this button. This button on his garment. Thank you, sir. Oh, 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 oh. Do you see this? Look on her. Look, her lips. Look there. Look there. Edgar says, he faints, my lord. Edgar says, break heart, I prithee break. And with that, he dies. Kent, we have Kent, Edgar, and Albany. Albany is an interesting one here because he was involved in Goneril's villainy. He was never a leading figure of it, but he was not a good guy. He was not on Lear's side, and that seems to entirely be forgiven in these last moments. We have Edgar and we have Kent, and what Kent says is, what Albany says is, bear them from hence, our present business is general woe. And then to Edgar and Kent, he says, friends of my soul, you twain rule in this realm and the gourd state sustain. And Kent says, I have a journey, sir, shortly to go. My master calls me, I must not say no. Kent is going to die to be with Lear. This king who had banished him for life because Kent tried to give him the right advice to see what was in Cordelia's heart and not what was on her lips. And it was not what Lear wanted to hear, and so he cast Kent out, and Kent returns to follow Lear, his beloved king, despite this treatment. And as Lear dies, Kent says, I will continue following my king. And Edgar gets the last word of the play. And it's interesting what he says. He says, the weight of this sad time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. The oldest have borne most. We that are young shall never see so much, nor live so long. And this is really where it differs from any other Shakespearean tragedy, right? Because you think about Hamlet, right? The entire royal family of Denmark is dead, but Fortinbras is there, and he says, I will take over the kingdom and rule well. You think about the Scottish play. The Scottish play's protagonist is dead, as is most of the rest of the sort of Scottish nobility, but there is to be a stability at the end. At the end of King Lear, Albany says, Kent and Edgar, you should rule this land. Kent says, I am going to die. And Edgar says nothing about it. Edgar does not say, I will do what you have said. I will rule in this realm and the Gord state sustain. He does not commit to that. And so while it's a small one, there is a question mark about what is going to happen to this kingdom, right? So it is one of the most brutally painful endings of any Shakespeare tragedy. And this is part of the reason why during the Restoration, when this play was revived by a guy named Nahum Tate, he was like, this is a downer, man. This is a fucking sad ass ending. And we don't really want that, right? This is the Restoration. We've just had this period of Puritan rule and everything was very gray and dour and just there was no fun to be had. And we don't want everybody to be dead and everything to be sad at the end. We want something to be happy. And so Nahum Tate rewrites the ending of King Lear to make it happier. But that's not the version that Shakespeare gives us. The version that Shakespeare gives us is one of the most existentially depressing endings to any Shakespeare tragedy.